The Atlantic Economy by
Talal Sahel.
and Kyle Conley.
The expansion of Europe in the 18th century was characterized by the growth of world trade. Great Britain took the lead by using mercantilism, which was aimed to increase a country's stock of gold by exporting more than it imported. The result of the English desire to increase both military power and private wealth was the mercantile system of the Navigation Acts, made by Oliver Cromwell. The acts required that goods were imported from Europe into Britain be carried on British-owned ships. They also gave British merchants and ship owners a monopoly on trade with the colonies, who were required to buy almost all of their European goods from Britain. The acts were a form of economic warfare against the Dutch, who were very far ahead of the British in shipping and foreign trade. From 1701 to 1763, after defeating the Dutch, France and Britain became locked in a series of wars to determine who would become the leading maritime power and claim the largest share of profits from Europe's overseas expansion. The War of the Spanish Succession began when Louis XIV declared his willingness to accept the Spanish crown at will to his grandson Philip V of Spain. A union of France and Spain threatened to destroy their colonies in America. In 1713, Louis XIV was forced in the Peace of Utrecht to cede Newfoundland, which is located here, Nova Scotia, which is this island here, and the Hudson Bay Territory, which is up here, all to Britain. Spain had to give Britain control of the Asiento, which is the West African slave trade, and let one British ship enter Spain annually. The next war was known as the War of the Austrian Succession. It started when Frederick the Great of Prussia seized Silesia from Austria's Maria Theresa, I believe. The war ended, however, with no change in the territorial situation in North America, and this is Silesia right here for your reference, and that is Frederick the Great and Austria's Maria Theresa. The inconclusive standoff was followed by the 7 Years' War, where in Central Europe, Austria's Maria Theresa, again, sought to win back Silesia and crush Prussia, therefore re-establishing control in German affairs. She almost succeeded, so skillfully winning both France and Russia to her cause. In the Treaty of Paris, France lost all of its possessions on the mainland of North America, French Canada, and territory east of the Mississippi. So that's basically the territory, French Canada there, east of the Mississippi. All of it was passed to Britain once again. France ceded Louisiana to Spain as compensation for the loss of Florida to Britain. And by 1763, the British naval power, built on the rapid growth of British shipping industry after the passing of the Navigation Acts, triumphed decisively. Land and labor in British America. The settlements along the Atlantic coast provided an outlet for surplus population. Unlike the great majority of European peasants, American farmers could keep most of what they produced. Availability of land made labor expensive in the colonies. The growth of foreign trade. Rising demand for manufactured goods in North America as well as the West Indies, Africa, and Latin America allowed English cottage industry to continue. Decline in many markets meant that the English economy needed new markets, and protected colonial markets came to the rescue. From 1700 to 1773, colonial markets manufactured products to the Atlantic economy. Cheap and scarce labor were critical factors in the growth of slavery in the colonies. Revival in colonial Latin America. Spain's vast empire lay ready for dismemberment, but Spain recovered under the leadership of Louis XIV's grandson, Philip V, who brought men and ideas from France.
Debt bondage. A planter or rancher would keep the state's Christianized Indians in perpetual debt bondage by periodically advancing food, shelter, and a little bit of money. In the 1800s, Spanish America accounted for half of the world's silver production and silver mining. It also encouraged food production for large mining camps and allowed Creoles, people of Spanish blood born in America, to purchase more European goods. So the Spanish colonial population was basically a large middle group in Spanish colonies, consisted of mestizos, and offspring of Spanish men and Indian women. And at the end of the colonial era, About 20% were white Creoles, 30% were mestizos, and about 50% were of African origin. Although mercantilism strengthened some countries, many independent merchants began campaigning against monopolized and called for free trade, where there would be less regulations. The general idea of free trade was developed by the Scottish professor Adam Smith, whose inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nations found in modern economics was highly critical of mercantilism. To Smith, mercantilism meant stifling government regulations and unfair privileges for state-approved monopolies and government favorites. Free competition, he said, would best protect consumers from price gouging and give all citizens fair and equal rights. Smith argued that the government should limit itself to only 3 duties. First, to provide a defense against foreign invaders. Second, to maintain civil order with courts and police protection. Third, to sponsor certain public works and institutions that could never earn an adequate profit for private investors. His invisible hand of free trade described the natural force that guided free market capitalism through competition for scarce resources. Smith's work emerged as the classic argument for economic liberalism and capitalism.